image, at least as we get started. So for anyone who doesn't know, my name is Megan Owens. I'm the Director of Transportation Riders United, and I am thrilled to have everyone join us here today, as well as on Zoom. It's always this era, people have gotten used to doing things virtually, and there is an awful lot of convenience for that, but there's also something really special about talking to people face to face in person. So we're trying our best to do a little bit of both. Doesn't always work perfectly, but I appreciate everyone's patience. But we have some excellent presentations for you today. As I believe most folks know, TRU's been doing a whole series of Transit Tuesday talks, talking about all sorts of different transit topics facing the Southeast Michigan region. However, there's probably not a topic bigger than regional transit planning. How are we figuring out? I think we got it figured out. Sorry for the chase. And there's some really exciting planning going on by 3 different agencies who are all really important to transit across this region. So what better to do than to bring all 3 of them before you today to share what their agencies are doing, what sort of planning they're doing, and what the opportunities are for getting involved and for sharing what you want to see. So I think we can jump right in. Y'all don't need to hear more from me. You guys are here to hear from our agency folks here. So yes, Ben, if you don't mind, we'll start with the Regional Transit Authority. Those of you who have been to TRU events have definitely seen Ben a lot. He's been managing the Regional Transit Authority, and let's see, just for quite some time. And yes, I will just let you take it from here. Sorry, I was going to do a whole intro and everything, but
it's fine. Let's do. All right. Hey, everybody. Is that the Zoom camera?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right. There's one in there.
Okay. Here. Cool. My name is Ben Supka. I am the program manager for the Regional Transit Authority. I want to walk you guys through kind of our regional transit planning process and try and provide some clarity on the linkages between what our local providers like SMART and Harmony is going to talk about later are going to do in this process, and what SEMCOG, our major regional metropolitan planning organization partner, does. So the mission and vision of the RTA, the vision is a region with sufficient and stable funding to support improved public transit options that will advance equity by increasing accessibility, satisfy the integrated mobility needs of Southeast Michigan communities, and promote livable, healthy, and sustainable growth.
Can you sneak in for just a sec?
Okay.
For some reason, it is not sharing properly. Oh, I suppose I have to tell it to share the right thing. Yeah. Yes, sharing the. No. Oh, yes. Okay.
Good. All right. So our mission is to manage secure transportation resources that significantly enhance mobility options, improve the quality of life for residents, and to increase economic viability for the region. So we're very much.
Step back. It's also looking at you there just to be.
Okay.
Weird.
Right there.
Okay. Well, don't worry about it.
Okay.
These days, I'll actually be an official tech support person instead of trying to juggle all of it myself. You sit later and we'll move on.
I can't, hold on, let me just do this. There we go.
So much.
Let's just start your video. Start my video.
I think that's just view.
Yeah. We'll go.
We'll try the screen share again.
Share here, here,
Okay.
and we'll go here.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
Yeah. See if that gives me a full screen view. it doesn't, I'll just use this slides like this. It's fine. Okay. So what's the RTA's role in comparison to the transit providers? So I like to say the RTA does 4 main functions. So we fund, so all the federal and state funding that flows through to the transit providers flows through the RTA. We also work to secure competitive grants and work in partnership with the providers and others to do that. We develop a regional master plan focused on transit in Oakland, Macomb, Wayne, and Washtenaw counties, working with our transit providers in the community. We coordinate with the transit providers and other partners to identify different initiatives that we want to advance out of the plan, and we accelerate. So we develop pilot projects, advance new ideas, build new partnerships, find ways that we can take the pieces that we identify in the plan and move them forward. The transit providers operate the transit services. They own and maintain the fleets and facilities, collaborate on the regional planning initiatives, and they lead their own service area planning efforts that we work with them in coordination on. So the master plan has 5 large goals: expand, enhance, innovate, partner, and finance. These goals were established in our 2021 master plan, and we've kind of held them true through all the iterations that we've been doing. One of the things we've changed over the last several years is we now do an annual update process. So we're kind of continuously updating the plan. Usually in the late summer, early fall, we go through some kind of community engagement process, whether that be working with our providers and just hearing what they're hearing back from their riders and their community engagement events, doing our own events. We work with the providers to kind of integrate what it is they're working on, just to make sure that this document is always as fresh as possible and as up to date as possible with what we want to do, the initiatives we want to move forward to improve regional transit here in Southeast Michigan. So the idea with that is that this is always something that we can have, that if we do want to go secure a grant, go do a ballot initiative, go do anything, we have a fresh set of goals, strategies, actions, things that we can take, that we can refer to say, this is what the region's vision is, this is how we want to move forward. I won't walk through this whole thing, but this is our schedule for updating it this round. Oh, and okay, it's back. We are just finishing our formal community engagement. We did dozens of events. Okay, thank you. Dozens of events. We have a survey that's on our website. If folks want to, still on the website, good. Thank you. If folks want to take that, please go ahead and do that. I will have it up for another month or so. And we're actively meeting with the providers this week, actually, and going through their priorities, and just kind of making sure we're updated. So this is kind of the annual cycle we're going to be on. One of the things you're going to see, it's a little bit different in 2024, probably in the winter, spring, is we're going to do what's called a coordinated human service transportation plan, which I did not name. That's what the federal government calls it. It's a mandated plan that we have to do that focuses on services for seniors and people with disabilities. So we're going to be doing a supplemental plan at a regional scale to focus on that. You have to update that every like 2 or 3 years. So we'll be doing a lot of community engagement around that in the spring of 2024. So you'll see us out there again talking about those issues. How does it all fit together? And I apologize, I'm not like a graphic person, so this is the best I could do. I'm sure I could do better than this, but essentially I use our 3 major providers, so SMART, DDOT, the RIDE. I know Harmony's going to talk about the smarter planning effort, so but that's an effort. You know, all 3 of them are either at the end of or just embarking on their own local service area planning. So largely we serve as steering committee members, we help support those projects. This is how they help define the type of service that they want to do in their service area. So we take that information, we integrate that into the master plan along with other regional priorities, try and find some commonality between those things. And then actually the RTA master plan becomes the RTP, basically the transit part of the regional transportation plan, which Chris is going to talk about later, is the RTA's RTP. It actually literally goes right into that plan. So anything that's in here goes into here. Now, SEMCOG's region is much bigger than the RTA's. They have 7 counties, we have 4. But it's a very direct relationship between all of these things. So maybe we can come up with a better graphic in the future as we explain. Okay. So this is a new kind of a new process that we're trying to describe to people a little bit more. So how do we get to projects? How do we get to the things that the RTA is doing? Things like the D2A2 service, things like the Airport Express service that we're going to be launching, the mobility wallet pilot that we're doing. So we're going through an annual process of reviewing the master plan, identifying those needs, identifying what do we have kind of the political willingness to move forward, looking at how those things advance our business goals. What do we want to do as an agency this year? Identifying and molding those into fundable initiatives. So for example, we might want to say, in our plan, we want to do BRT on Woodward. Well, that's a $500 million project. We don't have $500 million, but we can apply for a grant to do some nice improvements on Woodward or set us up for a larger grant. So kind of what is in the realm of possibility and realism for us to actually pursue to help advance these initiatives, what's fundable. We identify funding sources, put those in our annual budget. We launch pilot programs, do projects, we review, and we go back. So every year we're kind of looking at our master plan, pulling things out of it, saying, can we do this? Is this important to the providers? Is this important to the community? Can we fund it? Picking those things up, trying to get them funded and keep moving them forward. So a couple of examples using this kind of circle that are in implementation. The Detroit to Ann Arbor Express D2A2 bus. It's a bus that connects, express bus that connects downtown Detroit to downtown Ann Arbor. We've had that up and running for 2 years. The MyRide2 mobility management platform. So anyone in the region can go to myride2.com or 1-855-MyRide2. You can call and get information on any mobility service that you desire in the region. Not only public, private, anything you need, particularly focused on seniors and people with disabilities. So that's something we fund. Mobility Wallet is a pilot project to create kind of a technology solution to be able to pay for multiple transit providers, but also have multiple ways to pay into that wallet. So we're in the process of doing that. We have a downtown Detroit to Airport Express pilot project that we have just put a request for proposals for vendors to operate that out on the street last week, right? Okay. And hopefully we'll get vendors back and have that on the street in February, I hope. I really hope. We have an Access to Transit grant program. That's a small grant that we actually got from SEMCOG to do grants around transit stops that look at pedestrian and bicycle access. So knowing that the community is telling us that, you know, safety and access to transit stops is a huge important piece. We wanted to see, can we get some funding available to do that? That's probably about $2 million. That's maybe upgrades at 4 stops. There's thousands of stops throughout the region, right? So that's another example. We're trying something new. I completely and totally stole this from the Chicago region. I don't care. You can tell them if you want. Coordinated human service plan. So we talked about that. So we do this planning process every 2 or 3 years, and then there's a funding source called 5310. It's federal funding source that we provide funding for dozens of nonprofits and public providers that provide services for seniors and people with disabilities. So these are kind of the active things that we're implementing that tie back into the plan. These are the things that we're starting to kind of work our way through. Like, how can we start getting these things up and running and getting some funding for them? Regional transit corridor investments. We just submitted a $124 million federal grant to make investments on Gratiot, Michigan, Woodward, and Washtenaw. So that was through what's called the Reconnecting Communities program. We had 61 letters of support for that. So we have our fingers and toes and everything else crossed that we'll be able to receive that funding. I'm sure it'll be a while till we hear. Fare modernization, the mobility wallet project that we talked about as part of that. Workforce development. The transit workforce obviously is the most critical issue that we have in terms of day-to-day service delivery. For the RTA, we don't have a direct relationship with the labor force. So we're here to support our provider partners and whatever we can do to help them with the workforce issue, whether that's just simply promoting it to our policymakers, which is what I actively do every time anybody asks me, what can we do to help transit? Like, include transit workforce in your economic development initiatives. If you're talking about building a battery plant somewhere and you want a bus line that goes there, you need people to, you know, drive the bus, you need people to maintain the bus. So maybe we need to be talking about that. So I say that ad nauseum every time a policymaker asks me anything. I'd love to be able to do more. I think we need to figure out what best we can do in this space. Service pilots, we talked about that, and zero emission bus pilots, other things that just kind of supporting the providers in those efforts. And there's probably more we could add to this as we keep going. That's it. So lots of ways to get in touch with us. Please take the survey, sign up for our newsletter. We do a monthly newsletter. We update on all these things and more. You can info email at rtamichigan.org. We're on all the socials if you guys want to hit us up that way.
We'll do a whole discussion at the end, but any quick clarifying questions or things just for Ben before we move on to our other speakers?
Good, thank you. Yeah, it's going well. We actually just we gained 1,000 riders last month. We'll see. Usually in the winter, ridership tends to go down a little bit, so see how do that part of the season. But yeah, it's been
I just wanted to understand a little bit more about the zero emission pilots. We have anything in the works that is also into project.
So the actually the transit providers have a 3 or 4 like battery buses, or in the DI as well. So that's something we're kind of like, we're not totally sure what our role is going to be. We're kind of monitoring what they're doing, see what
We be able to for an addition 10 or so. Where it's still
I think there's lots of steps out. Battery. Yeah.
All right, well, let's have our friends from SMART come up next. We clearly have there's a lot of intersection between what is going on. And thank you, Ben, for providing that overview. And now we'll hear from our friends from SMART. If you want.
Right, I did not do an intro slide. I kind of just jumped right into it. I realized that as I was sitting here. So we'll get right into it. My name is Harmony Lloyd. I'm the Vice President of Planning at SMART, and this is my colleague. I'll let him introduce himself.
My name is Sean Stacy, Service Development Department under Harmony. My specialty is graphic design, but I also coordinate with Carol Lopez on the
Yes. So following up on what Ben said, I went more on the scale of what SMART specifically is doing and some of the initiatives that we have. He talked about workforce development. Hiring is always on everyone's mind. How can we get more bus drivers? How can we get people that want to come into transit and make it their career? I'll touch on Oakland County Transit expansions, the 5310 funding that Ben mentioned. Talk a little bit about our bus stop improvement project, some park and ride policy changes. That's something that is a cause I've started, and the Smarter Mobility Program, which is our official planning efforts. I just. Yep. Okay.
Tech is being so persnickety. Okay. All right. Yes, when you put it forward, how'd you do it with the pad?
That's the down
Oh, down. Okay, they're down.
down or
Down.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. We got this. It's not like we all haven't been doing Zoom for 3 years now. So this is at the forefront of every decision we make. It really influences how much service we're able to put out on the street, because you can plan the greatest service in the world. If you don't have drivers to run that service, then there's no point. So we are trying a lot of new things. Our HR department is holding drive a bus events where people can actually come to the event and on a closed course, not on the road, try driving a bus, because obviously it's intimidating, the idea of moving a 45-foot bus or even longer. Streamlining the hiring process, doing a lot of initiatives to support the trainees, more celebrating their drivers' graduations. We just had a class of drivers that graduated on Friday, and our general manager went and talked with them, gave them their certificates, just that kind of letting them know that they are an important piece, and we recognize that. Contracts, this group is very familiar that SMART is still working to negotiate contracts with our drivers, and they do include pay raises. That's something I can publicly say. So we recognize that they need to be paid more, and that's part of the process. And then providing a monthly report of how many, not only hirings, but how many separations we've had during that month. So there's the transparency that not just saying we hired 10 drivers, if we lost 3 because they retired or because they quit, then we really only got 7. So, just sharing that information so that people understand where we are with that. Again, just celebrating the people that work there. We're currently doing operators of the year at each of our terminals, and their prize is they get to be on the side of a bus for a year. So doing a bus wrap, which of course would be pretty amazing for anybody. And then they bring their families, get invited, and they get honored at our one of our board meetings.
You also get the best parking spot in the building each term.
They do. They get a spot, a designated spot. And I heard the other day that one of the people that got the designated spot actually is only a bus user and doesn't have a car. So we were encouraging him to trade for it or something. Expansion, many of you know, probably most of you, that in November of last year, Oakland County voted to be all in on transit. So their whole county is now paying into the millage and has the opportunity to get service. So that has been a whirlwind process. There was we kind of did it in the opposite way, where the election happened and it passed, and then the planning happened. But that's okay. We're excited that we're able to have the opportunity. So just to look at some of the key things that have happened. In May, we went through a public hearing process for some of the new routes that we had identified for our phase 1 changes. Through the summer, our planning team has been meeting with the communities that are new to transit. It's been really eye-opening, and we've learned a lot as we've gone through that process. In September, we started expansion routes on Novi, through Novi, Wixom, and connected Bloomfield Hills with our current Woodward line, but there was kind of a hole where Bloomfield Hills did not have service, and they now have a stop on Woodward. So that small thing, but also a big thing. January 2024 is our next time that we will do some new service. It's called our run pick. It's the quarterly time when changes are put into effect with the drivers. January 2024, we will not be doing any Oakland changes. We're going to focus on Macomb and Wayne. But we are bringing back service in Macomb County. If you're familiar, we're bringing back service on 23 Mile Road to New Baltimore. So that's a really positive thing. The leadership there has been very supportive and encouraged us to come back. And so we were able to, after having to leave for a couple years. And then in Wayne County, we'll be providing service on one of our current routes, but through downtown Romulus. So that was cut all the way back in 2008 or so, around the recession. 11, and we are bringing it back. So again, small things, but huge things for the people that use those services. April will be our next big Oakland rollout, and we'll be focusing on the Rochester route, which is Route 492. That's had a lot of attention, a lot of excitement. We are actively in the process. While I was sitting here emailing with the city manager at Rochester to talk about bus stop location. So that's all happening, and we're hoping the weather holds so that we can get some infrastructure poured before it gets too cold. And then summer of 2024 will be focused on Route 759, which many of you know as M59 or Highland Road. It'll be providing service there, so a little bit more north of our service area. So Ben mentioned the 5310 program. We're a recipient. RTA provides the money. They have a process. As he said, it supports transportation options that are specifically designed for older adults, person with disabilities. RTA gets the money, and then we go through an application process on behalf of agencies that provide this service. And so this is not a comprehensive list, but it is just a good snapshot of the type of organizations that receive money through the 5310 program. And they are invaluable to us and invaluable to the community, and are really well loved by the people they serve. So bus stop improvement, this is something that we've just started and initiated. I'm sure you all have seen bus stops that just appear to be a hole in the ground, in the grass. I can't tell you why that's happened that way, but it has for a long time. We have changed our policy so that all stops going forward will have the ADA pad and a key walk, which is that little connection to get you from the pad to the sidewalk. So that will be part of every stop going forward at a minimum. This is the minimum. There'll be stops that have shelters and other amenities, but everyone will have at least this. And then we've put funding aside for the next 3 years to do a full upgrade of all the old stops that do not have this connection. And SMART has about 5,000 bus stops, so it's a big undertaking. But we'll keep chipping away at it so that it creates better access. And then one of the issues that we've learned about as we've talked with cities this summer, sometimes people aren't clear on whose job it is to put a sidewalk in a community. And that, again, may sound like a simple or obvious thing. It is not, I promise you. There's a lot of people that have different ideas on who should be responsible for sidewalks. At the end of the day, we're a transit provider, so we can provide that connection to the sidewalk, but we'll be looking to really partner with the communities and the county and MDOT and continue to advocate for sidewalks in every neighborhood, because everyone should have pedestrian access. Park and ride. So one of the things we've learned as we've done the expansion in Oakland County is that many of the park and ride or carpool lots, they're often called, they typically are in a suburban area. The idea is that people will bring their cars there and then we'll ride together to jobs in the city to reduce congestion, to help the environment, all those reasons why you carpool. What we've learned is that many of the park and ride and carpool lots do not allow buses in them. So it goes a little bit against the spirit of the idea of the program, because ideally you would have everyone park there and all get on the bus and travel to, you know, a common location. So we have reached out to SEMCOG. We've talked with MDOT at the county level, and understand that they've talked to their state level people. We are going to keep pushing this. I think this is something that, while it may not affect, you know, thousands and thousands of people, it goes towards the idea that we are a mobility friendly state. And We're all using taxpayer funded resources when we use buses and carpool lots. So it's important that we coordinate and make sure that those are accessible for the people that want to use the bus to get to work or wherever they're carpooling to, bus pooling to.
Parking and riding.
Parking and riding too, yes. So Smarter Mobility is our current planning project. So that is what we've embarked on to look at what do the next 3 to 5 years look like for SMART and what things we'll be focusing on. We've hired consultants that are doing the work, a lot of the work for us. This is an overview of the program. We're looking at our fixed route, our connector service, which is the smaller buses that you see around, and our current microtransit, which is called our flex service. And determining how best to improve some of the service that is existing, and then look at what is the future going to hold. Where are we going to expand in Oakland County? Where should there be a fixed route? Where does microtransit make more sense? And what is that blend of the two? We're working hard, as I said, to connect with the communities to come up with solutions that fit their community. So these are the 5 goals. Establish microtransit as a permanent service. Right now it is just in the pilot phase, but it's coming to the end of that. Looking at how to improve technology, ensuring that fixed route is integrating with microtransit and isn't taking the big buses off the road to put a bunch of smaller cars. They both have very important functions that they can serve, and in a perfect world they work seamlessly together so that it really creates an option for people to travel short trips by their house and long trips using the fixed route system. Expanding, as I talked about, our service area has grown by thousands of miles, I think. And so looking at how best to meet the needs of some very urban areas and very rural areas, and how do you provide the best form of transit in those communities, and doing it using data, not just putting buses out there without understanding why. What we're currently doing for the Smarter Mobility program is we're working on what are called origin and destination surveys. So wondering where people are going when they're on the bus, talking to them and finding out where did they start, where are they traveling to. We've been doing that for the past 3 weeks. This is the 3rd week. So far, we've collected 1,700 surveys on the buses. We've hit all of the different shifts. Hit every day per week, hit every route so that we make sure that it covers a good amount of the people traveling. Initial observations, our riders are riders that use transit for their daily lives. They use it on average 5 days or more a week. We got a 4 out of 5 on satisfaction. I know not everyone believes that, but there are riders who do really appreciate our service. And I'll say that the consultant said that was that just in general, the feedback that they received, while there was a lot of concern expressed about canceled routes because of the driver shortage, there was in general an appreciation for SMART service. And he said that's something that's different than they see in a lot of other communities. We also wanted to try and hit some of the non-riders that are in areas that are currently not served, but are within our service area and that fall under that demographic of having a high chance of using transit. So we've gotten 350 of those so far. I don't have the results. That's something that'll be coming over the next couple of months. This is what the schedule looks like for Smarter Mobility. We've already passed June through September. It's really important for us to hear everybody's voice, but it's not realistic to have, several million people to talk to. So we've created different working groups, stakeholder groups to try to touch a lot of people in Metro Detroit. We're working with federal, state, and local officials so that we don't hear that one of their constituents called them and said, you know, what is going on with SMART, and they don't know how to answer. We want to be able to tell them what we're doing and keep them informed. We have several different working groups that come at the technical aspect, at the stakeholder is what you all are, people that are interested in transit and have a vested interest in how we improve. And then when we say transit operator, my brain thinks bus driver. That's not a bus driver. We will be talking to the drivers. Transit operators are ourselves, DDOT, and many of the smaller agencies that we've talked to, WODA and NODA and the OPC and some of those providers to get their input. October, as I mentioned, we're really focusing on the surveys. December, we're having some new committees that we formed to start meeting. And then January and February, we'll be doing the wider public. So holding, public engagement sessions, both in person and on Zoom. So kind of the ask at the end, how do we do this together? I know how committed you all are to transit and how patient you've been through the years and through the good times and the bad times. So we want to keep that conversation going. We know sometimes it won't always be pleasant, but we want to hear that. We hope that you will join us in advocating for better infrastructure. What we've really learned through this Oakland County expansion process is that our cities are not built to support buses. So we have to come at it a lot of different ways, whether it be building the park and ride so that they can hold the weight of a bus, to putting sidewalks in, to allowing SMART to put bus stops in different cities. So it's something that we constantly advocate for, but it helps when they hear it from a lot of sources. And like I said, we're committed to continuous improvement. We know we've missed the mark in the past sometimes, but I'm always willing to listen and take ideas and take them back to the team. They are amazing at knowing the ins and outs of routes and what can and can't be done. And so that's where we're trying to get, is to where you can really use the service in an effective way.
Before we move to Chris Semcog, any quick clarifying questions for Harmony?
There'll be an open Q&A at the end.
Yes, we'll do a whole Q&A, but I just wanted to give people a quick second in case there were any pressing clarifying questions.
Just a quick one. So bringing the service back to New Baltimore around those routes that the state of
We can't know that until we have the service back on the road.
Well, there'll be extensions of current route numbers, so.
Yeah. You mean like ridership?
No, I mean.
No,
like,
he means the actual route number.
like,
Oh.
796 versus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the
280 would still be the 280, the 560 would still be the 560. I thought
You were thinking ridership.
Ridership. Okay.
All right. Well, last but certainly not least, Chris Williams. And I will say for folks who've been watching, following transit, you certainly know RTA and SMART incredibly well, but it's important to note that that SEMCOG also plays a really important role looking at, across the entire 7-county region at all of the different transportation and water and land use and all sorts of other systems. So, but transit's obviously an important part of that. So Chris is leading a really important project that we will have him share with you a little bit about before we move to Q&A. Let's see if this will. All right. Yeah. Thank you for checking that. Trying to juggle too many things, and apologies for those in the room if there's an echo. I don't know why that is still happening, but there you go. Third time's a charm, maybe?
All right. Good evening. My name is Chris Williams. I am a planner with SIMCOG, the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. I am also the Regional Transportation Plan Coordinator. It's the long range transportation plan for the region, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that here in a second. Just say down. The down. There we go. All right. Just to give you a little bit of background about SIMCOG, we are as been mentioned earlier, we're the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Southeast Michigan. We have a 7-county planning area. So Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and Washtenaw counties. We also do the transportation planning for St. Clair, Monroe, and Livingston counties as well. So as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, what we're doing, we're responsible for coordinating the transportation funds that will come to the region and coordinating with the different local communities, road agencies, transit agencies on kind of disseminating those funds out to the respective recipients. And then also making sure that there's coordination between the different counties, the different transit agencies, the transportation agencies within our planning area. We do that for transportation. That's what the MPO role is. But at SIMCOG, we also do a lot of planning for the environment, community and economic development, education, some workforce planning. So we wear a lot of different hats at SIMCOG. I am a transportation planner, and so I mainly deal with transportation, but you'll see, and I'll show kind of one of the opportunities later is kind of where a lot of those worlds kind of merge and meet. And so what I'll do is just kind of show you what the SIMCOG vision is. So it's for all people in Southeast Michigan to benefit from a connected, thriving region of small towns, dynamic urban centers, active waterfronts, diverse neighborhoods, premier educational institutions, and abundant agricultural, recreational, and natural areas. One area where kind of touches all of those things is transportation, right? In order to kind of have a lot of these things, you have to be able to, be mobile and accessible to the places that you need to go. And so transportation is very important in the region, and we take that responsibility seriously. One of our core kind of ideas is that an efficient transportation system is vital to the economies, to the quality of life, and just kind of the overall health of the region in Southeast Michigan. And then, to that, public transportation is actually, we think is the cornerstone of that, right? So without a well-developed public transportation system in a region, there are challenges with the overall transportation system, right? Mobility and accessibility is crucial for our transportation system, and public transportation is the cornerstone of that. Because you can see with our vision is that it has implications for a number of different areas of just kind of the quality of life in the region, right? You need to be able to get to work or to medical appointments, to schools. We want to make sure that the air quality is clear in the region, and transportation has a big focus on that. Transportation touches a lot of areas in our region, and so as far as kind of how we do our work, SIMCOG, as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, we do the planning for transportation projects in the region. And so we have to coordinate with a number of different agencies. So we coordinate with transit agencies, with the RTA, a number of the roles that you saw that Ben mentioned that the RTA holds. SIMCOG used to hold those things, those roles before the creation of the RTA. And so, as you mentioned, a lot of the direct contact with the transit agencies, kind of funnels through RTA, but we also coordinate with the RTA and then a lot of times directly with the transit agencies in order to have certain projects implemented in the region. We provide data and analysis for a number of our different regional partners. We hold the regional model, and so we're able to provide those services for modeling different transportation scenarios. And again, we also program the funding for the region for transportation. So it's interesting, or it's important to note that we at SIMCOG, we don't directly provide any service. And so really our mission is to work with the RTA, work with the transit providers to kind of be a conduit for how to program the funds that we receive in the region for transportation at large, but also transit as well. One way we do that, and it's very important, is through our regional transportation plan. And we're actually in the middle of updating that plan. We have to update this plan every 4 years. And what the regional transportation plan is essentially, it's the blueprint or the guiding document for prioritizing transportation options in the region. So all the money that will come to our region from federal highway or just whatever's authorized in the transportation bills that are passed for the SIMCOG region. So the 7 counties, we have to disseminate that out to the different transit providers, to the road commissions, to municipalities, and you need a plan for how to do that, right? So you have to prioritize where the investments will be. And so we set those priorities, we set those policies through the long range plan or the regional transportation plan. As Ben mentioned earlier, for transit, by reference and also kind of through once the plan is adopted for the regional transportation plan, those policies and those actions that are identified in the RTA master plan will be included in the regional transportation plan. So, everything that they're doing, we are kind of supporting and, we'll be including the long range plan. But for those 3 counties outside of the RTA, we also coordinate with them to determine, where your priorities will be, what services you need, what kind of deficiencies there are with the systems, and kind of identifying ways to fill those gaps with the funding and the resources that we can expect to receive in the region. Again, we're currently updating that plan. We have gone through several iterations of public input. We actually have a survey open as well. So I'll put it up. The survey is open. You can use the QR code. You can go to simcog.org/vision 2050. It'll take you directly there. But that also leads to our Vision 2050 hub, which has all the information of what we're doing for the long range plan, what are the draft policies, what are some of the considerations, what are some of the guiding principles for that plan, and just a number of different resources for data that we use, data that's available for transit agencies, that's available for all of our regional partners is on that hub, and we'll continually update that throughout the update process. And even after the plan is developed, we'll use that to kind of push out information about the plan, some of the projects that hopefully will be implemented in the plan, different scenarios, that we can model to, see what certain effects of transportation investments will look like in the region. One thing I do want to share is there are opportunities for competitive grants in our region. And so what we do at SIMCOG is where there are competitive grants or where we know that there are opportunities for funding that can be used for transit, we try to push the providers, we try to push RTA and notify them of those opportunities. You know, I've worked on a couple of different programs since I've been in SIMCOG, CMAQ, and carbon reduction. These are competitive grants from Federal Highway, but they often have small provisions that allow for certain projects, transit projects. And where those kind of funds are available to be, we call it flex, so moving money from Federal Highway to Federal Transit, we definitely try to take those opportunities. You know, a lot of the different regions, they will, you know, use those funds for, you know, strictly road projects. We have a policy through our regional review committee where for carbon reduction for CMAQ, those funds will be split, half for roadside, half for transit. And so, you know, it's not always a lot of money. When you think of the grand scheme of like the long range plan and the shorter term plan called the TIP, those are tens of billions of dollars of programs and or projects. And then, you know, we can, you know, generally control, you know, for instance, CMAQ is about $15 million a year. So, you know, it seems like a lot, just kind of number wise, but in the grand scheme of things, you know, it's really a small portion of the TIP. But where we can provide some additional funding for transit, you know, we do kind of take those opportunities, and typically what we award under those programs are bus replacements for cleaner vehicles, service expansion, although, you know, this money comes from Federal Highway, so it's, you know, typically allocated for roads, but, you know, as we're able to flex, a lot of those transit projects that are funded through CMAQ and carbon reduction are pilot projects. So, you know, it's sort of to demonstrate that these types of services and expansions can work, and hopefully can kind of develop some long-term sustainable funding. But, you know, where we have discretion to kind of to provide additional funding for transit, we definitely want to make sure we take those opportunities where they are available. One of those opportunities, and one of my colleagues was supposed to be here tonight, but she was unable to make it. She works in the environmental team, but there are a couple grants that are in the works for healthy climate as a part of the healthy climate plan. And with those, there is a carbon, I think there's a carbon reduction grant for that's available nationally through EPA for a number of different projects. Included in those are transit projects. So it's just kind of another one of the instances where, you know, we're looking at identifying additional sources of funding for transit projects in the region, even through, you know, a number of our different work areas. So, you know, this is an environmental grant, an environmental project to develop the Healthy Climates Plan. But where there are opportunities to fund transit projects, we want to look for those opportunities as well. So as you can see, the SIMCOG is working on a healthy climate plan, and I believe that will just pretty quick, so it'll be done in 2024. But as a part of that, we've been identifying where the sources of pollution really in our areas, and as you can see, transportation is a major driver of that. And one way to combat that is through encouraging public transportation. So there are, you know, like I said, a couple different grants available for this funding, and, you know, we're encouraging, and I know that an environmental team, they're working with some of the transit providers in order to develop projects or identify projects that may already be on the in their plans to apply for some of this funding. And so hopefully, you know, we can set those applications in and generate or get additional funding in the region for transit projects. Again, that's going through our environmental team. Lindsay Kirkes and Tyler Clifton are leading those efforts. And again, we love our QR codes at SimCog, so you can kind of sign up for updates there. But really thinking about ways to get involved in the short term. Again, we have our RTP survey going now. I encourage everyone in this room, everyone online, to take the survey, share it, because the more surveys we get, the better we can identify where those priorities should be. At the RTP Hub, there's a space for comments, and I can assure you that we take those comments very seriously. We're actually working with the Transportation Coordinating Council to go through those comments and develop policies that we'll then present to the executive board, which is made up of elected officials in our region, in order to set those priorities for the region. And often a number of those to be competitive for certain grants and certain awards that come through from the different agencies in the government, you have to have these policies set that you can demonstrate that these are actually things that you want or that you're looking for in the region. And so it's really important to set those policies. As SimCog, as staff, we don't set the policies ourselves. We do the work, we kind of collect the data, we do the public engagement, and then we send our recommendations and we work with our standing committees to send the recommendations to the elected officials, and showing them exactly what people want or what people are desiring in the region is, always, sort of the best way to kind of make those marks. Also participating in our committee meetings. So like Transportation Coordinating Council, that is open to the public. We hold that every other month. And really those are the forums to kind of show up, relay your ideas and your thoughts and your desires, and then those kind of get filtered up into to the elected officials on our executive board, and then also our General Assembly. In fact, we have a meeting Thursday, and we're going to present kind of some of the draft policies from the plans, from the comments that we've gotten so far in our RTP update. But really, we're always looking for more comments so we can, make sure that the policies and the actions to meet those policies are specific project, or not even specific projects, but specific actions that we could take in order to reach those goals and those policies. So again, simcog.org/vision 2050. That's the website for the RTP update. Please, send us any comments, any thoughts. We read those. We use those to develop our policies that we will present to our executive board and the elected officials. So, everything counts, and we're really working through those to make sure that we address the issues in our region. For transit, and then also for the transportation system at large. So
Wonderful. Actually, I'm going to invite all of our panelists here to come up to the front, and we will shift gears to Q&A and see what sort of discussion we can get into. So we got lots of questions. Let's see, I don't need to be plugging it up anymore. So move around over here. You're gonna see if that's aimed right so everyone can see us. All right. Well, thank you again to all of our speakers. Clearly a ton of exciting stuff happening. And yes, transit policy is very complex. There's a lot going on. I think we're probably fine there, Deb. There's a lot more goes into it than I think most of us ever realize, how many different layers of studies and data and going through various processes. So let me run through a couple of the questions that we have online. They've been coming in. People have been anxious to get questions. So there was a question about Ann Arbor's climate neutrality plan calls for reducing the miles we travel in our vehicles by at least 50%. Any comment on ways to provide citizens the option to drive less to meet the challenges of climate change? I guess that's more of a broad input, but if anyone has feedback on that.
Sure, I mean, I think that's what we're all doing here,
Yeah.
right? We're developing all kinds of different styles of services to give people all kinds of different options. We didn't delve in great detail, but we talked about the Detroit to Ann Arbor Express bus. So that's a large regional, connection. Certainly the fixed route services that Smart provides, and probably more interestingly, the Smart Fast service that they provide are all different types of options. Smart's just expanded into new areas. So it's really about those types of options. It's also looking at things like scooters and bike shares and all these other what we call micro mobility, all these parts of the mobility ecosystem to give people those options.
Any other thoughts on? Okay.
Sure, I'll
If
just
you
say.
want to add, you don't really have to, but.
No, sure. I'll just add that, again, I mentioned a lot of the competitive grants that some kind of oversees, and, we're looking for, we've had a number of discussions and meetings over the past few years to kind of expand those projects or those funding grants for projects that aren't necessarily road projects. Typically those would go to the roadside. Again, you have to kind of flex it, and it's really, it's a process, but going forward, I know that there is a lot of interest with leadership in our various committees, again, made up of elected officials, to expand transit services, non-motorized services, micro mobility, like Ben mentioned, in a lot of the competitive grants that we do kind of oversee. Again, we do try to, again, it's not a lot of money,
Sure.
but as Ben mentioned earlier, doing what we can with what we have, that's kind of our goal to provide whatever service or whatever, whether it's one bus replace, we have enough funds to replace a bus and go to clean fuels for one agency. We want to do that, whatever we can.
Excellent.
I think I'll just add,
Ditto.
from a transit perspective, from a provider perspective, we know it's all about making it convenient and reliable to use transit. And I think those are aspirational goals for us to have higher frequency. The bus is going to come at a certain time, and when it says it's going to come, it's going to be there. And then there's lots of places you can go from when you get on that bus, and that it is reliable, like I said, that it's going to be there when it says it's there, and that's not too long of a wait. So I think on the ground level, those things are key to get people to use transit.
Absolutely. Excellent. Yeah, actually, do you want to join us up here if you're part of the SMART team there?
Jumping off of what Harmony was saying, in reducing route mileage, you also have modernizing the carpool and park and ride systems,
Yeah.
a lot of which is stuff that's been in place since, well, there's one on Fenton in Redford that's been there since the early 80s.
Okay.
And it's kind of modernizing and expanding that network is really important to reducing transit miles outside of public transit.
Absolutely. And I'll follow up on the comment you made earlier about, I didn't realize, as it sounds like you guys didn't, that a lot of the carpool lots don't allow for buses, which is crazy. So yes, let's talk with our friends at MDOT and make sure that gets changed. If the buses maybe can't pull all the way in,
Right.
can they
Yeah.
be a stop along the road right next to the carpool lots so people can utilize it.
Or
That makes
just
so much
one
sense.
piece of road that is reinforced where it can handle the weight of the bus, so. it
Yeah.
can Pull through the lot, it doesn't have to be the entire lot that is, created to withstand the weight of a bus, but one road, like you said,
Yeah.
one pull off that can handle it. Those are things that should just be part of the planning policy.
Absolutely. Questions here? I'll see if I can alternate between our online and our in-person folks. We have someone in the back.
I'm here. Question is, I think in, our overarching goal, of course, in building a more sustainable future, I think oftentimes building an equitable future goes hand in hand. I'd love to hear what you're doing to, from like an environmental justice standpoint, whether that's your service routes or whatever that is, how we all are contributing to the goal of, a sustainable and equitable future as well.
So yeah, just to repeat for the folks online, the question is how does equity and environmental justice fit in to some of these efforts? Because yeah, I fully agree, equity and sustainability so critically go hand in hand. Anyone want to jump in on that?
Yeah, sure. So, as a part of the long range plan, the regional transportation plan, we've always had to do
environmental justice analysis of the projects that will be included in that plan, and also the tip. A few things kind of beyond that we're doing, and one of them is kind of a federal initiative called Justice 40, to make sure that the benefits, at least 40% of those benefits go to those populations. And so we actually had a meeting earlier, task force, to better coordinate how we will address those kind of initiatives in the long range plan. So really it's starting off as kind of a series of meetings with providers and with various agencies, but as a jumping point for, perhaps a task force to kind of continue this work even after the long range plan is adopted. We've done studies and work in the past to SIMCOG, access to core services, to how well certain destinations and facilities can be accessed with the current system, and then maybe some plans for how to address those deficiencies in the future, and whether it's the RTP or some of like the localized plans, and providing that information to our members and partners. But really, and we've also been working really hard to update our equity mapping and tools to kind of better show kind of where some of the projects will be with some of the populations that we don't traditionally or aren't necessarily included in it. So single mother parent households, carless households, English as a second language or a non, primary language, those types of populations. And so we've been working really hard to update those maps. And then we'll use those maps, for, developing the tip. I keep mentioning that, but really the program of projects that have funding and that will be implemented in the region in, over a 4-year period. So equity is really one of the main drivers of the RTP, this cycling going forward. And, it's really major. And so we're hoping to kind of expand on, some of the things that we've done in the past, and for not only this iteration of the RTP, but kind of going forward and making that a prime. In fact, one of the policies and one of the goals is equity, and kind of how that plays in the whole transportation system. Again, not just transit, but, roadways and non-motorized facilities. And
Now, is there other requirements? Is there something that SIMCOG's doing to specifically incorporate the Justice 40 initiative, and the idea that at least the benefits of at least 40% of the funding need to go to these communities? Is that explicitly a goal?
yeah, so we're hoping to, again, through this task force to kind of identify those areas, and then really drill down
to kind of project level implementation, so that when we're getting projects for the long range, or not the tip, excuse me, long range plan tip, they're kind of the same thing with just kind of different time periods, to make sure that those projects are certified as, you know, being gone through the Justice 40 equity process, to make sure that those projects have been considered with their, not only, you know, their benefits, but also their impacts, you know, with you know, construction or routing, things like that.
Yeah, the benefits versus the secondary impacts is important to look at. You guys want to add anything, or? Okay,
So, yeah.
excellent. There've been a couple of questions about how your respective organizations are coordinating with Michigan's Talent Attraction and Retention Program to promote transit as a key cog in infrastructure recommendations. Is that something that you guys have been involved in? That was, yeah. How are transit priorities being influenced by the Michigan Population Growth Strategy? Both of those related.
Yeah, so we've presented to, there's several statewide commissions that are focused on several different issues.
I know.
Right? So
All
we've, we've presented to or participated in the Healthy Climate, Michigan Healthy Climate Plan, the Council for Future Mobility Strategic Plan, and we're beginning some conversations with Growing Michigan Council, is what they call it now. I would say every one of those includes transit, probably for the first time ever. Yay. Not necessarily always the clearest thing in terms of what their goals there mean, but that's okay. We can work with something where they say transit is a key. So for the Growing Michigan Council, they have a specific task force focused on infrastructure. They are right now, the recommendations I've been reading are focused on definitely want to expand transit and looking at funding options to expand transit. What those look like ultimately we'll see. We're going to be working to get in front of some of the task force members, working group members over the next couple of months, but they're on the right track and they have the right, you know, right ideas in there. That report should be done, I think, in December, and then we'll see where that goes. I think, is that what they're talking about with the, okay. There's a lot of statewide. Yes.
Keeping the kids here.
Yeah.
Yes, the Keeping the Kids Here task force. Yes.
Yeah, I think we might have copies. When that first was launched, I submitted an op-ed into Crain's that pretty much looked at the last 20 years, even just looking at Crain's articles and editorials. There were at least 15 different ones that said, transit is key to population. Transit is super important to keeping young people here. What do we need to do to attract jobs and talent? We need to invest in transit. So, and I've shared that with the Population Council as well, or hopefully they'll get that. Are you guys connected with that at all? The Growing Michigan Together Council?
I am not familiar.
Okay.
But I would say that the long range plan, the backbone of the long range plan is the regional demographic forecast.
Okay.
And so what we're projecting the population to be in 2050, 2040, where those people will live, likely where they will, you know, where the employment will be, and then planning accordingly for what those population increases will be. And then, you know, not even just, you know, the raw number or the, you know, the population increase number, but like the demographics within that increase. So we recognize that Michigan is growing older as a region, and so we have to plan and develop transportation facilities and programs to accommodate that. We also see that the younger folks who are staying or moving to Michigan, they have different views on transportation. You know, fewer folks are getting licenses, you know, more car sharing, more desire for public transportation. And so, you know, we have to kind of take that into consideration as well and make sure that we're planning transportation facilities and the system as a whole accordingly.
Excellent. And add anything, or?
I think that it's just, you know, representation on the committees is so important because if you're not at the table, you're not going to be part of the conversation. And so even though it sounds like a small victory, even having transit named as part of it and in people's minds is important. And then I think just practically talking with legislators and keeping them informed, like I said, with our smarter mobility plan, because grand ideas are amazing, but to be able to put them into action, we need those legislators that are at the state level or to help enact policies and fund all these ideas around transit.
Excellent point. I'll even use that as a quick segue to say, come to our next Transit Tuesday talk. In November, we're going to be talking with state legislators and talking about how state policy can help shape, can help influence transit. We've got some great legislators who are very enthusiastic to make positive progress. So, all right, another question here.
To how many, but certainly open to the panel. Thank you again for this very instructive discussion. Harmony, I'm quite keen to hear about your current micro transit pilot program, just to get more clarity, more insight into what that looks like. A second question to you is, as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about transit specifically in Michigan, I just came from New York City and DC, and I enjoy transit there, and I'm wondering if it's a behavioral thing here. So for your non-transit folks that you guys surveyed, what are some of the lessons that you're getting from those surveys? Then my last question is, and I totally agree with you, representation matters. You do have a slide on technical advisors. I'm wondering what that makeup looks like and how you gather folks to be part of that.
Sure.
Okay, those are.
I was going to say a couple of questions, but yes.
Transit, if you're not familiar with it, is typically smaller vehicles, and it is an on-demand service. So it would, it's best explained as the public version of Uber or Lyft. You typically use your phone and app to request a ride, and it comes within a short time period, takes you from curb to curb. So from your location to close to where you want to go. There are a lot of advantages to it. It's convenient. You don't have to plan necessarily to be on a route. You have that access, but it is adding vehicles to the road and not moving people at a mass level like buses do. So like I mentioned, ideally, microtransit is used for those shorter trips that are within a community, and that's how SMART has designed what we call flex zones. So there's the pilots, there's 5 communities that were identified, and they have boundaries, and the flex vehicles operate within those zones. And it was testing the concept if people would use it. They are enormously popular. People use them for those trips locally, and then we encourage and we hope that people, if they're going on longer trips, will use Flex to get to the bus stop. One of the biggest issues in transit, if you're in this world, is called that first mile, last mile issue. So if you take the bus, how do you get to the bus if you're not living right on a route? Microtransit can be a good option for that. It can give that short ride to get you to a larger route. So that's where we're at. We're looking at, again, the public loves it, but we don't want to contribute to putting, thousands of cars on the road running around. So we're trying to balance what that looks like. And it does make sense for more rural communities where a fixed route wouldn't necessarily make sense.
And there is a higher cost rider. Cost element as well, right?
Yes.
As a
cost element.
challenge. Yeah, people love the door-to-door personalized service, but the cost.
Non-transit surveys.
So we haven't gotten the official results of it, but just, anecdotally, what I know is that Detroit is called the Motor City and is a car-centric area. And one of the observations our consultants made was that Detroit has a very low non-owning car population, lower than other large cities. And if you look at the median income, that maybe doesn't make sense. You would think lower income would translate to less cars. But again, in Detroit, we love our cars, and so people use them. And that has caused there to be disinvestment in the public transit system. And so people have not thought of it as an option unless they absolutely have to. And so that's what we're trying to change.
And what they refer to as, at least in the industry in older years, what we refer to as choice ridership. People who have access to their own individual transportation, but choose to use public transportation or choose not to have a car, is lower than is traditionally average in other major metropolitan areas like New York City or Chicago. So it's just a matter of trying to meet the communities where they are and hopefully improve that.
And there's a certain amount of chicken and the egg challenge. When, as you noted, the most important thing is the service being there when people need it. Was just hearing from someone yesterday who had been trying really hard for her and her daughter to sort of live car free, and just too many times the bus didn't show. So now she's scrambling to figure out, she can't really afford a car, but is scrambling to figure it out. So hopefully we can get them into a more positive spiral for better service, enables more people to make that choice, which helps support better service. But another question, maybe a little bit of a wayback machine. What about the proposed My Train project, which was supposed to run between Detroit and Ann Arbor? What was the status of that? And then there was another related question of how's the D2A2 bus service going? Someone's thinking about buying in Detroit and want to be able to get to Ann Arbor regularly.
So those two things are actually connected.
Yep.
So one of the purposes of doing so when the My Train project, for those who want to know, that the idea there was to have a commuter rail project connected Ann Arbor to Detroit. The last time we looked at cost for that project, it was well over $500 million. That's for 8 round trips a day. That's it.
On existing track.
Existing track. That's no new stations or anything else. So it's extremely would also require, depending on how we did it, to set up a whole new operating entity to actually operate that rail. So it's a big undertaking. The last time we did ridership modeling, this was several years ago, the ridership models that SEMCOG helped us with, were showing, well under 1,000 people a day wanting to take that. So not a very good connection.
But it's also very hard to do a ridership model on a
without,
doesn't exist.
right, without having an established transit market, which is why part of the reason D2A2 exists, which is an express bus between the 2 points, to help us establish some kind of transit market to get people in have an idea of traveling between, using transit to travel between Ann Arbor and Detroit. So we have about 7,000 riders a month, which is around 200 riders a day, which is not tons and tons, but for a service that's already been running only for 2 years, it's a good start. So we're going to kind of keep monitoring how that goes. We're going to be talking to Amtrak and MDOT about their ongoing plans to expand their service. That's one of the things I've always put out there, is to say, look, if a ridership market exists here and MDOT's got plans to take their current 3 round trips a day up to 10, let's see them do that. That'd be great. Let's do that, and then we can kind of work with them. One of the models that other regions use is they offer subsidies for passes. So let's say it costs $50 to go on Amtrak between Ann Arbor and Detroit. If we can figure out how to fund it, of course, as always, you could subsidize that down to a regional pass level. So that's another thing we've been kind of talking to the state about, but they've had plans to do that for a long time. So, yep.
Excellent. Anything anyone else wants to add there? All right, Corey.
First of all, I just wanted to say, so my question / comments for the accessibility angle of things. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you for addressing it. Thank you for spotlighting that, because as much as I love the local transit expansion, that was my one big criticism was, you know, hey, I have a friend who is a wheelchair user who was not eligible for a transit and who relies on fixed route service who can't use this. So to see if that's finally being addressed and it's going to be an improvement, it's great to see. My question then is, so for Ben V, I know we have the access to transit project coming up. Can you expand upon what that might look like and when we were expecting to see the survey start? And for the rest of the panel, let's say, is there a way we can take what SMART plans to do and apply that regionally so that we can have a regional network of accessible stops, make sure they're all meeting the same standards, the same equal access?
So, can you
Yeah.
include the question in the answer?
Well, I can answer both questions the best I can. So, the Access to Transit Grant Program, so what that is, what it started as, it's $2 million. We got a grant to focus, and the current focus is to look at doing upgrades at major regional transit stops, you know, pedestrian crossings, bike parking, those types of things. We've delayed kind of putting that out onto the street, and I think maybe doing some coordination with SMART and their program. And there's I'm not going to make any promises, but maybe there's a possibility for us to kind of look at maybe we do smaller improvements at more stops. So we're still in that kind of policy making process of like, what do we want this to look like? In Chicago, where I completely stole the program from, they do like probably 10 projects a year, maybe $500,000, $400,000 per intersection. So think like full intersection upgrades. You guys can picture that, crosswalks and new transit shelters, things like that, which I think would be wonderful and could be a really good advantage, but you're only talking $2 million. That's 4 or 5 projects. So maybe there's a way for us to balance a little bit of that and to incentivize bringing DDOT and others into the mix along the way. So that's a good point. And we have some time. It probably would be like next fall, just given where we are with all the other things we have going on. It'll probably be some time before we get that out on the street.
And for folks here for folks who are online, he was also noting just how important it is to have that accessibility at transit stops, as Harmony was talking about, ensuring that if somebody can get in a wheelchair on a bus, but then if when they need to get off that bus, there's nowhere that they can get off and get where they need to go, then it's not truly accessible. So do you want to add anything more about what you guys are working to do in that regard?
I mean, it's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
When you know, just driving here, and I drove a car, but I noticed every single stop, and just on the way here, looking at all of them and thinking about, you know, the reality of how much it costs to pour concrete and to use contractors. It will not happen overnight, but it's also, you know, if we don't get started, it's never going to happen. So I hope that changing the policy, the SMART policy, so that all the new stops going forward are that way, and then we'll just keep chipping away at the existing stops.
Particularly ones that have the highest demand, the highest ridership, obviously get priority first, but also requests from the community members, requests from community leadership. We'll take a lot into consideration on how we triage it, but we're moving forward.
That's a great point. I mean, if there are specific stops where people that have accessibility issues or want to take transit and there's a stop that they know they would use, you know, we take that into consideration. We're just here.
What is the best way to share that type of input?
You can certainly call our customer service department. Those kind of requests get funneled directly to our department. So it comes in through the main customer service line, but they're putting into a system where it would come to us and we would see it. Or you can use my information that was posted and shoot us an email, and then I would connect you with the planners who would get more details.
Excellent. So yeah, that is a good point. If folks know of a stop that there is the great, where you see a very substantial need, obviously with 5,000 stops, you can't do everything, but identifying where there's the greatest need, communicating that so those can be prioritized. Chris?
Yes. So it's not necessarily transit specific, but When we think about accessibility, we think about sidewalks. And so I know that there was a kind of a comment or a question earlier. It's like, who owns the sidewalks? How do those, get fixed or upgraded or whatever the case is? At SIMCOG, we do have a grant program called Transportation Alternatives Program. So it's a federal program, and it's for alternative transportation projects, right? So included in that is a sidewalk program. It's not a large pot of funding. And again, costs have kind of risen exponentially over the past few years, for materials and labor and things like that. But it is a rolling kind of program, a rolling application, and communities can apply for those funds to kind of upgrade or put in sidewalks where there are no sidewalks, and some may, lead to transit stops. And so, again, it's one of those areas where it's not specific transit funding, but hopefully, we can use those funds to accommodate access to transit.
And I know like the city of Detroit is really focused on, they've got a safe streets are people program. And they're really looking at the full mobility, not just streets for cars, but looking at the full mobility of all users and really trying to incorporate some of their transit enhancements into that sidewalk and streets enhancements. So that's a great way to see all of these pieces are interconnected. So we certainly have a lot of folks who love rail. So I'll share a couple of comments. Yeah, we'll get that in just a sec. I want to get a couple of here. Kay mentioned keeping intercity passenger rail and commuter rail in mind as Southeast Michigan plans for the future is vital. Adding a daily round trip between Kalamazoo and Detroit, another between Chicago and Pontiac, 10 trains a day between Ann Arbor and Pontiac. The tracks are already there. So just more enthusiasm for rail. And there was another question about what about getting commuter rail service up to Pontiac, similar to what we had in the 60s and 80s. Any other? Same answer. Well, it would be fabulous. We were talking hundreds of millions of dollars, and there's not funding for it right now.
Our predecessor organization set to operate that service well into the 1970s, maybe like 80.
I think 84.
As ridership gradually declined and the cost of operating the service went up and up, it was just harder and harder to justify when, for 1/10, 1/20th of the price or less, you could have a bus that does the exact same thing, which is now what we basically do.
Yeah, although there was certainly something of the spiral. Again, less ridership, so they provided less service, so there was then less ridership. My father, when I was little, rode that train from Detroit to Ann Arbor, from Ann Arbor into Detroit. But at one point there was only down to one trip a day, and that's hard to live around. All right, well, I wanted to make sure to at least express some of the questions and comments that we're hearing. So yes,
So
another audience question.
Young people wanting to have more accessible transit and use transit. Are you, and this is a question for all three of you, are you doing anything with, let's say, high school age students to have basically take them, show up to schools, take them inside and just show them how to use transit? There have been programs like that have been implemented, I think, in parts of Ontario, and they've shown that ridership increases because these are students who don't have access to vehicles. I shouldn't say get hooked early. That's kind of not the best way of putting it, but that's kind of what happens, right? I guess, have there been any discussion on any programs like that?
So just so the folks on the online can hear the question about, since we want to get more young people, since young people want transit, are there any efforts to work with middle or high schoolers to try out the transit service?
We don't specifically have a program that targets high school, middle school students, but it's something that's on our radar. I can tell you
just today, we had been talking with Royal Oak Schools, and they had, their superintendent had reached out and said, you know, the students want to use the bus, but the times are just a little bit off. And we were able, again, the planners and schedulers were able to work a little magic, and it was just a matter of, you know, making small changes so that they can jump on the bus and be able to use it. And they have a lot of students that do want to. So I think the key is going to be continuing those conversations with the school systems. We are not school bus providers, but I agree with you. If we can get people comfortable using the bus, if you've been to, you know, Baltimore or DC, you will see somebody who's 10 years old that is fully comfortable using the Metro or one of the systems. So getting people used to the idea young, I think, is really key.
I'd say quickly, one of the programs that we fund is targeted at students with cognitive disabilities and giving them travel training to be able to use not only the fixed route bus, but also paratransit and other things. That's just, again, it's specific to some school districts and different schools. But so we do have a few of those types of programs, but not kind of a broad campaign.
That's a great idea. Another thing to explore.
Add to your
give
list.
people more. Yes, yes. As soon as somebody wants to fund us to do it,
There
we'd
you go.
love to make that happen. I did want to share, I guess it's more of a comment for SMART. If SMART would start running at 4 a.m., it would allow workers to reach jobs that start at 6 a.m. and to not leave second shift workers stranded who get off at 2 or 3 a.m. So
I think when we have enough drivers, we will certainly look at providing the most amount of service that we can. We're always trying to strike that balance. So we are trying to fill in those gaps while doing it with a not enough people.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was,
Historically, we have in the past, back in the day, you know, before the pre-pandemic times, we had buses that pulled out as early as I think like maybe 3:10 a.m. to serve that
Really?
very first shift.
okay,
But we also don't want to overcommit to something that strains our resources too hard.
absolutely.
So we're listening.
Excellent. And then there was also a request that it would be great if you could publish some of that aggregate data from the surveys. There were
We will.
some people who were really interested in hearing more about what that survey feedback provides.
There's I didn't pitch our website, you guys did. Again, I thought, so there's, it's smarter-mobility.com.
I think so.
Org?
I thought it was org.
All right.
I couldn't
We'll
get on
double
it today.
check.
It was super weird.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, all of the results will be on, the site.
All right. All right, Mary Jo.
Yeah, org.
Yeah, I actually have just some comments. So, lots of information has been shared tonight, including opportunities for, public engagement. I look to True to find out about those because that's what I look to you for. So I would encourage, you know, the three speakers to make sure that they're getting their information for these public engagement opportunities to Megan. I know I get regular stuff from SEMCOG anyway, so that's why I knew about the survey, but I don't think I knew how long it was going to last. So I think I'm going to put it back on my big website. So please do that. If any of you are working with your clerks in your cities about early voting next year, one of the things, you know, all the things they're looking at, always bring up public transit and say, are people going to be able to get to those early voting sites? Because they're looking for different, you know, buildings and stuff. So I think that's very legitimate. And so to get out information, I'm looking more at SMART. As you know, DDOT has a monthly call-in or, you know, Zoom meeting, and they have all their honchos there. Very interesting. I do learn a lot, but I would love to see something like that. The only opportunity I know of at this point is if you go to one of the quarterly meetings with the Commission for the Disability. I don't remember what the exact title is, but that's where there's some, you know, public comment. So you can ask a question or make a comment, but I would love to see that inspired. And then just for that you mentioned the rail lovers, and yes, and so there's an association called Michigan Association of Railway passengers, and it's an wonderful advocacy group. And you can look them up and find out. So if you love trainings like I do. Thank you.
All right, some great feedback from Mary Jo. Thank you for that. And I am pleased to say we obviously work a lot with these guys and are on that smarter mobility planning.
Project steering
group.
committee, and I'll say that's another thing that the consultants who are from out of state said when we were forming the project steering committee. They said you need a member from this, a member from this, and I said, well, you know, we'll have Megan from True, and they said, no, you don't have the advocates on the steering committee. You wait until after, and then you go to them. That's not something you do. And I said, no, we are. We're starting, they know more about the transit system than all of us combined. So they're gonna have a seat at the table. And we know that True is critical in dispersing information. So we're committed to working with it. Working with all of you and having members on different committees, not just, you know, Megan serving on the steering committee, but there's other smaller groups that would make sense.
And then we're also working on at least the climate, the SIMCOG climate team. So pleased to be there as well. More comments or questions?
So I have a question. What are there any plans for like redevelopment or creating density where there used to be density and it's gone, or possibly where there's crazy urban sprawl and you want it to kind of like redevelop into like one area? And is there anything that you guys are doing with old industrial corridors, like old freight corridors that aren't used anymore that could be converted to transit corridors other than bike paths?
So I'll let Chris maybe answer beyond me saying land use development is a very local decision. So we, you know, we do know that transit investment, particularly high frequency transit, capital intensive transit, generally is best deployed in high density areas. So we're always trying to strike a balance between where can we deploy those services to meet what communities look like now and what they are planning to look like in the future. And that's, you know, Chris coordinates a lot with the local communities on that. But we also, to Harmony's point, when you guys are now figuring out, trying to get a bus to go out into Novi is really important, but they don't have any buses out in Novi. We can't make Novi into downtown Detroit or downtown Royal Oak right away. So you have to deploy a very different type of service. So like there's this balance between how do you get the service out there? What does it look like? And, you know, also letting communities have their own land use planning.
I think too, important way to do that is continuing to talk to employers, large employers, and educating them to think about if they're on a transit line before they put the factory there rather than afterwards. And then they are asking transit to come to them. They, you know, historically have bought land way far out in rural areas and then wanted the bus to come when they realized they needed employees in those rural areas to staff. So an education piece that we're just trying to push is, you know, come to us first if you're going to build. And I think Amazon did this, and unfortunately it didn't work great for Detroit because of the lack of transit. But there are many Amazon distribution centers and other places like that that are starting to think about that. And we just continue to hammer away, like, put your business on a transit line. It will make your life easier because you will be able to hire a huge pool of employees.
And while you guys can adjust a schedule or such, you can't run an entire new route to a completely new area just for one facility. You can adjust a little bit, but and then obviously land use and transit intersections is a SIMCOG
so
component.
as I mentioned earlier, kind of the backbone of the long range plan is the regional demographic forecast. And so that's a whole process. It took, you know, maybe a year and a half, and we always update that prior to the RTP updates. And that involves looking at local land use like plans, forecasting like future employment patterns and development patterns. And so what we do is once that plan is that forecast is complete and adopted, we provide that information to the local counties, the we call them federal aid committees. It's just kind of one for each county in the city of Detroit, and provide that information along with, a lot of the transportation travel demand model information that says, hey, this is where we anticipate people to live. These are the land use patterns. These are the expected funds that we expect to receive in the region for this particular time period. Kind of plan your system or your needs accordingly to this information, and then hopefully the local agencies take that information and kind of use it to develop those plans. We can provide additional information, we can provide like additional guidance kind of throughout that process. So what comes from that, we don't necessarily, at least at SEMCOG, because we're a regional agency, drill down to like specific projects and we don't kind of dictate exactly where you're going to put, that's a local decision. And I think that's a good thing, because we have to look at such a wide region that making sure that those decisions are local is important. But those are things that go into the forecast.
I would say that I've shared this with some our MPOs and council governments elsewhere in the country that do look at things a little bit different. They look at what is the development that they would like to see. There are places who've said, hey, this is where it looks like we're going. Oh God, that's not where we want to go. We don't want to pave over all of our forests and farmlands. We don't want to depopulate our urban areas. And they've actually adjusted their transportation plans to focus on where they want development to go, recognizing that it's not just transportation following development, but it can also be the other way around. And where we invest transportation resources can then shape where that development goes. So I will just share that and encourage SEMCOG to think more, not just about what is likely to happen if we keep doing what we've always done, but look at what do we want to have happen and how do we build towards it.
And I'll agree with you. I worked at other MPOs across the country, and it's unique, the structure of SEMCOG with the federal aid committees. We're a little bit kind of ceding that decision making to the local agencies. And it has its benefits. It has its kind of detriments as well, from other regions. But there are some opportunities where we can be a little bit more I don't want to say directive or prescriptive in some of the things, especially with the competitive grants or the pots of funding that we control, where we can exert a little bit more of that kind of, hey, this is what we've identified. We're looking for these particular projects or these particular outcomes. But again, that's really like a small portion of the funding that we receive. And who knows, going forward, we've kind of done a little bit of that with, safety, for instance. We are, we just adopted a goal in the region to reduce serious injuries and fatalities on our roadways to 0 by 2050, which, it doesn't sound that radical, right? But it took a lot of work, and it took a lot of input and a lot of kind of work to even get that. And so hopefully, as this goes on and we develop actions and projects and policies based on even meeting that goal, then we can kind of translate, that to other areas in our transportation plan.
I know that there are, we have to wrap up. I know that we could keep going and questions, and there's so many important and exciting things you guys are doing. But I will actually close with Mike's question on here. This is a great group of presenters. What can we as members of the community do more to help you achieve your goals? So if you guys each want to make some closing remarks, both about how can people get involved and how can we help support your efforts, we'd love to to hear there. If you want to, I don't know.
Sure. Well, I think we've touched on a lot of the things, so I'll just repeat it.
You know, get involved with our planning process. We all have them. We all have surveys up right now. So, you know, take those and provide your feedback. We talked about if you are aware of an area that has inaccessible stops, you know, reach out, let us know that, and we will respond and take care of that. You know, the group did an amazing job with the millage last fall, so we don't have that going this election, but we will again. That makes a big difference. Continue your advocacy that you all are so good at. And then, you know, we will reach out as we're dealing with these infrastructure challenges with different smaller communities to hopefully help you. Hopefully you all can mobilize to help us realize, help them realize that transit is a benefit to their community.
Excellent.
I would just say to, you know, in the kind of short term to please take the survey. There is an incentive for taking the survey as well. So,
Yeah.
you know, just kind of keep that in mind.
Chance to win. Yeah.
Yes,
Chance
chance to win a
money.
gift card. Yeah.
All of a sudden you see a big spike.
But you know, just you know, for the RTP in particular, you know, we have a kind of a email address, you know, specific to that for comments and for thoughts and ideas. Is rtpoutreach@semcog.org. But even beyond that, all of our committee meetings are open to the public, and we provide time for public comment and public participation at those meetings, whether it's like individual or whether it's, you know, group as well. And you know, we're always hosting a number of task forces and committees in order to develop policy or to develop kind of recommendations to present to the elected officials that comprise our boards. And so, you know, we have a number of different groups and task forces.
Attention, please. The library will close.
All right.
The third floor has closed at 7:45 p.m.
Oh.
Public internet computers will begin shutdown procedures. All documents should be saved immediately, mail or an external device. If you wish to register for a card, again, periodically.
It used to be my job when I worked here.
Please
Yeah.
go to the free desk now.
All right.
Thank you.
That's why.
He used to do that job.
That used to be my job when I worked.
All right, so we will do our hence the closing remarks.
I can make a quick ditto to everything you said. You know, we have a newsletter, we can put all the stuff on rtamichigan.org,
check out the newsletter, just participate, keep the conversation going. And you guys do this, but you know, ride the services. Like, let us know what's happening out there. You know, encourage friends, family, others to ride, your local players to ride, organize rides. Like, just get out there and use the system and let us know how it's going.
Excellent.
And I know you guys do that. So yes, but so yeah, yes, yeah.
And of course, True is very pleased to as Mary Jo said so well, to serve as something of a liaison to try to get the information from these great folks out to you. We'll make sure that we share. I think at least one of those surveys was in our last newsletter. We'll make sure more of them get out there. And we're actually, our volunteer team was just talking about needing to do some more local work. And we'll have some county subcommittees of our volunteer team engaging as well. So there's definitely a lot of exciting planning and engagement going on. It's great to hear these different levels, and while sometimes it may feel like they're unrelated, clearly a lot of this stuff is closely interrelated, and they're always figuring out ways to work more together. So thank you to everyone online. Thank you for everyone here. Those folks who are here, grab some sandwiches to go. And stay tuned. Our next event, November 14th. Is that November 14th? Thank you. That one's going to be a virtual event focused on state policy And then mark your calendar now for January 30th is going to be our big State of Transit annual event, our big annual meeting. So lots more opportunities to stay involved. Let's give another big hand to our presenters. Have a great night.
No.